Timber framing is one of the oldest styles of construction in the world. In fact, it dates all the way back to the Old Testament. That's why we traveled to Michigan and met up with one of the world's greatest timber frame manufacturers, Timbercraft. For over 40 years, Timbercraft has been perfecting the art of timber framing with state-of-the-art design and manufacturing techniques. Timbercraft has taken it to a whole new level.
Here at Timbercraft, we are architectural craftsmen that design, manufacture, and install heavy timber frame structures, both for residential and commercial use. Our company was founded in 1978, and our mission is to honor our creator and our craft. What makes Timbercraft a very unique and amazing company is we do a type of construction that's over 2,000 years old. However, we've modernized it. Now we've brought it into our manufacturing facilities, so it's a controlled environment with CNC equipment. We actually service the entire country, and we build internationally. When you build in different geographic areas, you have different constraints that you have to deal with. On the West Coast, you have earthquakes and seismics, or in the mountains, you have heavy snow load. We have the experience to help our customers go through that process and bring their ideas to life and build their dream timber frame home.
With a full in-house design and engineering team, Timbercraft is able to design and build structures anywhere in North America. Their focus is to design a timber frame structure that fits each individual client's budget.
Every timber frame that we manufacture is going to be very unique because our clientele's wants and needs are very different, and we're customizing each project for our customers. Some of our customers have been blessed with multi-million-dollar budgets, and some of our other customers have much more modest budgets. But one of the great things about a timber frame is anyone could have these big exposed beams. The way that we achieve that is through a process called hybrid. A hybrid timber frame is where you focus the timber framing in high-use areas of the home, possibly the kitchen, the dining room, the great room, the master bedroom, a covered porch, the main areas in the house where you actually live. Then as you get into other areas like the breezeway, closets, a guest bedroom, go ahead and conventionally build those.
With their unique style and attention to detail, Timbercraft's quality and craftsmanship is unmatched by others in their industry.
At Timbercraft, we're dedicated to a particular style of mortise and tenon joinery called the house joint. The house joint is where, instead of just the tenon going into a beam, the whole member goes in and then the tenon. And the reason that we do that is as wood dries, it wants to shrink and twist. And when it's in a pocket, you don't see that shrinkage. And if it wants to twist, it can't actually go anywhere. So the process that we do in manufacturing is we take and hand select each and every timber. Then all that detailed joinery is milled on our CNC machines, but that's only part of the process. After that, our skilled craftsmen go ahead, take these timbers, and we pre-fit or pre-assemble the entire structure, front to back and left to right. We want to make sure that it's a very tight fit and that it's perfectly accurate. And once we're done with that, we go ahead, disassemble the entire structure, label it, stain it and ship it however the customer wants, and then at that point, it's off to be built. But the key to this whole process is our house joint. It ensures that our Timbercraft timber frame is going to look exactly the same today as it does 100, 200, or 300 years from now.
As one of the world's greatest timber frame design and build firms, Timbercraft buildings are built for life.
Good evening and welcome to our webinar, Dirt to Done, Planning, Designing, and Raising the Frame. I would like to thank Timbercraft for sponsoring tonight's event. For more than 40 years, Timbercraft has achieved the highest level of satisfaction by creating homes that fulfill your dreams in both form and function. Timbercraft's goal is to help you create a place that is built for life. Visit timbercraft.com to learn more and view their timber frame home plans. Our speaker for this evening is Bob Sternquist, President and CEO of Timbercraft. As a fifth-generation builder, you could say timber framing is in Bob's blood. Born and raised in LA, he worked in the building trades with his father, including a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to help build the Olympic Village when LA hosted in 1984. Bob hadn't planned to remain in the building trades, but as fate would have it, after moving to Michigan in 1996, he was introduced to timber framing and fell in love with the art, beauty, and majesty of this ancient craft. Joining Bob for this evening's presentation will be Timbercraft's lead designer, James Miller, and Colorado homeowner, Peg McVeigh. Before we get started, I wanted to let you know that we will save some time at the end of the event to answer your questions. Questions can be submitted in the question area on the right side of your screen in your control panel. Bob, I'll let you take it from here.
Thank you, Amanda, and welcome everyone to our Dirt to Done webinar. As Amanda mentioned, my name is Bob Sternquist here with Timbercraft, and I am super excited to do our webinar tonight. And to be honest with you, the reason I'm excited, it's not like any other webinar that we've normally done. Over the last 21 years, I've been very blessed with Timber Home Living and AIM Media to be able to put on a lot of timber frame webinars and workshops. But every time we do one of those workshops or webinars, it's about the industry, it's about the different products that we offer, but that's not what we're going to do with this webinar. Instead, we're going to invite you in to learn the journey that our customer went through in building their timber frame. And when I say journey, that's really a good way to describe timber frame home ownership. Very rarely do I meet a customer that's a first-time home buyer and says, wow, timber frame's cool, and just builds a timber frame home. Typically, just like you're doing right now, our homeowners do a lot of research. They do a lot of investigation because, to be honest, a timber frame is very intimate and very personal to the different people. Oftentimes, I'm building a vacation home or the final home, kind of like the legacy home. I mean, that's what I certainly built for myself. I mean, I built my house and I'm done. When it's all said and done, they're probably going to put me in a box and plant me out back because this is our final home here. And for most of our customers, that's what it is. But in this webinar, we're going to go ahead and share all the different steps that our homeowner had. And instead of me rambling on for 45 minutes, I'm going to be the interviewer, and I'm going to interview the homeowner and James Miller, our lead designer. That way they can share what the whole process was like. Now, one of the things that I would like to bring up right now is if you have any questions, please go ahead and start submitting those, because at the very end, the homeowner, and both James and myself, we will be available to answer any of the questions you have. If you have questions about where did they find their plans, any questions at all that you can think of, go ahead and submit those. Now, a lot of people are going to be watching this webinar on demand, and if that's the case, please feel free to still send the questions, but email them. Send them to bob@timbercraft.com or james@timbercraft.com. Would love to answer your questions and help you through the process. And if you ever have plans and you're curious what a timber frame costs, go ahead and send the email in. We'll be glad to work with you and see what we can do to help you. So before I actually introduce my guest for this webinar, I would like to give you a little bit of background on the project before we get started. So let's go ahead and do that right now. First, I certainly would like to introduce Timbercraft. Now, here at Timbercraft, we are traditional mortise and tenon timber framers. So predominantly what we build are timber frames that are held together with wood pegs. But because we're also a national distributor, oftentimes we have to do a type of timber framing referred to as post and beam, and that's where there's metal plates. Now, the picture that I have up on my screen is a good example of both. The rafter that's coming into the post is a mortise and tenon joint that's held together with wood pegs. But the horizontal beam, we have a slotted piece of steel, and we have bolts in there, and then we put wood pegs to make it look like it's mortise and tenon. But here at Timbercraft, we're able to help you with either style of joinery that you're looking at. Now, here at Timbercraft, we do design and build both residential and commercial structures. Probably 5 out of every 6 projects are residential structures, but we do commercial structures as well. One of the things, though, that really makes Timbercraft a very unique timber frame company is that we have state-of-the-art CNC milling machines. This particular machine that's up on the screen was created by a gentleman by the name of Hans Hundiger. And here at Timbercraft, there are only 4 of these Hundigers in North America, and we ironically have 2 of them right here in our shop. Now, a little side note, we would love to have you come see our 2 different machines, but because we have 2 different machines, we had to give them 2 different names. And we named our machines, and if you're old enough, you'll understand this reference, Hans and Franz. So we'd love for you to come down and visit and meet Hans and Franz and watch them go to work. Lastly, we do have full in-house and design services. So depending upon where you are in your process, maybe you have an architect and you're looking for a timber framer and a structural engineer. Well, here at Timbercraft, we can provide that service. Or maybe you've got some ideas and you need to start from scratch. We can definitely help you with that. So definitely please keep our information, keep us in mind. We'd love to help you. But Timbercraft was the manufacturer on this project. The other person that was intimately involved is James Miller. He's head of our design. Very proud of this young man. He's been with us just shy of 10 years. And for the last couple of years, because of COVID and everything else, he's actually been running Timbercraft, and he handles most of our projects. And I'm so proud of him that when I step back from Timbercraft, I have already named him to be the future president here at Timbercraft. Now, our clients, really awesome couple that I met back in 2015 is Peg McVeigh and Tony Stam. They were looking for a dream home that they were going to build and retire in 5 years. So it was a journey for them to go through this process. Now, they were residents of Fairfield, Ohio, about 3 hours south of us at Timbercraft. But the really cool thing is where they ended up building their timber frame home, which was in Canyon City, Colorado. Now, Canyon City is unbelievable mountains and views. And when you design and build a home in an area where there's heavy snow loads, seismic, heavy winds, we'll talk to James a little bit about some of the challenges and some of the things that he had to account for when he designed the structure. But our customers were building a home over 1,200 miles away. Now, I ended up meeting them at a log and timber home show in 2015, and they came in absolutely prepared. They actually had a floor plan that they had created. And so what I did, and probably some other manufacturers did, is we provided a proposal to build their structure. And what I initially proposed for them, and I'll show here in a few minutes some images, was a full timber frame structure. But once we began talking, it became obvious that probably the best route was to work and try and drive the design towards a hybrid timber frame. And you'll hear hybrid quite a bit here in the timber frame industry. Now, what a hybrid timber frame is, it is a timber frame where we focus the timber framing in certain areas of the home. Because see, these big heavy timbers, timber framing is a style of construction. You can timber frame 1 room, 2 rooms, up to the whole house. And the great thing about a hybrid timber frame is regardless of what your budget is, if you have a realistic building budget, we will be able to build a hybrid timber frame for every single customer that comes through the door. Now, here's an example of a hybrid timber frame. This is a project that I did in Gig Harbor, Washington. I had a general contractor that approached me, and he really wanted a really dramatic and interesting center section of the house. And he also wanted some trusses over in the master. The balance of the house wasn't timber framed. Sure, we could have timber framed everything. We could have timber framed the closets. We could have built the coolest timber frame laundry room in the state of Washington with soaring ceilings and big beams. But financially, does that really make sense? That's where if you focus the timber framing in high use areas of the home, it makes a lot of sense. Now here at Timbercraft, we have some ranges that we encourage every customer to consider as they go through their project. Now, the timber frame and SIPs is kind of what we'll call the shell of the house. The timber frame is the exposed structural skeleton, and the structurally insulated panels are the walls and roof. Now, let's just take a number. Let's say that you want to build a house for $600,000. We want to make sure that your budget is 20 to 25% of that. So $120,000 to $150,000 is where we would typically, if you have a $600,000 budget, we want you to keep your timber frame in there, because we want to make sure at the end of the day you actually have money for carpet and all the other odds and ends at the very end of the project. You don't want to blow your whole budget up front. And if you do keep your project in this range, you will absolutely be able to have one of these amazing homes. Now, on this project, we really focused the timber framing on the first floor of the house, but we did so in a very creative way, where basically the timber frame is in the great room, the kitchen and dining area, the master bedroom. But a brilliant thing that I love what our clients did is they did some timbers on the outside to give a flair for what's happening on the inside of the house. Now, keep in mind, if you do put wood outside, you're going to have some perpetual maintenance and a little bit of staining, but honestly, that's where we typically see the main areas where you live, if you focus the timber framing there, and that's what we certainly did on this project. Now, I want to show another project that we did just north of Fairfield, because my clients actually came out and visited when we were erecting this home. Now, this is a hybrid timber frame where we focus the timber framing in the center section of the house. Once you put walls and roof on it, this is what you get. An absolutely amazing timber frame. Now, as the president of Timbercraft, I live in a hybrid timber frame. I focus in my great room, my kitchen, master bedroom, and our loft. I didn't want to put timbers up in my son's bedroom because when he was younger, he would have thrown a rope around it and swung from beam to beam. So it didn't make sense for me to timber frame the entire project. And outside that, I had a fairly modest budget at the time when we were building our home. So hybrid timber frame truly is a very exciting and excellent way to go. And I think you'll love some of these photos that we're going to show you of this project. Now, before I introduce my guests, I want to go over a couple of important research steps that I've for 21 years recommended every customer do, and I know that my clients actually did some of these. First and foremost, subscribe to Timber Home Living. Now, obviously, I'm doing a webinar on their platform, but I don't get paid for this. I'm not instructed to tell you this. I believe in this. I cannot tell you over the 21 years I've been timber framing how many customers before the internet would tear pages out of Timber Home Living, or now a lot of them will print different articles from the internet and bring those in. Timber Home Living does a tremendous job of sampling from all the manufacturers and giving all of our customers great research ideas. So if you're not subscribed to Timber Home Living, please subscribe. You'll absolutely love it. Now, another important thing that you should do, obviously, we're now in the COVID era of the world, but I strongly recommend that you attend a Log and Timber Home Show. It's a great opportunity to meet the different manufacturers, to see the size of wood, and meet the players that you're going to be dealing with. So that's our second. Our third area that I've always recommended people to do is attend our Timbercraft Saturday workshops and timber frame home tours. It's a great opportunity because with a lot of these webinars, I'm promoting the industry. But at these Saturday workshops, I'm going to specifically talk about where the costs are, what Timbercraft charges, but then I'm going to take you through finished homes. And you're going to be able to see what it was like. And I cannot tell you how important it is. Talk to previous clients. Understand what the procedure was like, what different services did they offer. Also, another important thing to do is go visit a timber frame raising. Timber frame raisings are one of the coolest and most exciting things to do. When I pick up these timber trusses or bents and I'm flying them through the air, it is funny to watch cars pull over on the side of the road when they watch a 7,000-pound truss fly through the air and come in and be set. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of traditions here at Timbercraft. Because I handle all of the install work, it is so much fun to be able to be part of that and watch the process. Also, the last one here though, definitely visit a timber frame that's been built for over 5 years. And the reason I say visit a timber frame that's been built over the timber frame or for over 5 years is it's had a chance to dry, it's had a chance to check, it's moved in whatever ways it's going to move. To be bluntly honest with you, you could go to any timber frame company in our industry and you're going to get a great timber frame. Our timber frame industry has some of the finest craftsmen in the world working in it. But where you see the quality and craftsmanship isn't really on day one. It's the attention to detail, how frames dry, how they move, how does the company account for it? So definitely go visit a timber frame that's been erect for a few years and you'll really enjoy it. So what I'd like to do now is move on to our actual interview and move on to our first segment. And what I'd like to do is invite my guest to come join me here for a fresh start as we go ahead and we start our presentation and answer questions. And there's our star of our show, Peg McVeigh. How are you doing, Peg?
Doing well, thanks, Bob. How are you?
I'm doing good. And how's the house coming?
It's coming along. I left Tony up there working, so thank you for this interview right now.
No, not a problem. I'm excited. I'm looking forward when I go to Arizona, swinging by, and there's cold adult beverages in the fridge, right?
Absolutely.
All right, I look forward to it. And Mr. Miller, how are you? How is life over at Timbercraft?
They're going pretty good. Hanging in there. A lot of fun.
Good deal. Good deal. I know exactly where in Timbercraft you are right now. I recognize that road. Anyways, Peg, got a couple
Yes.
of questions for you.
Mhm.
Tell us about your property. When did you buy your property? How'd you find your property? Just give us a little bit of background on your property there.
Okay, well, my husband and I started looking about 12 years ago. We knew we wanted to move out west. We like the less humid climate. We were from, as you said, Fairfield, Ohio, which is horribly humid. Um, we started in Wyoming, too much snow, too cold.
Okay.
Then went to New Mexico, not enough water. So I remember back in college, I'd come to Canyon City, Colorado, because they have the not the world's highest suspension bridge, but one, it's like 1,200 feet. You can walk across it and blah, blah. And I thought, well, it was a really cute town. Let's check that out. And we found some property that we absolutely loved. It's 35 acres in the mountains. And and it had a well on it because we knew that was part of the issue out here. And so that's how we came to finding Colorado and our slice of heaven.
Well, very cool. Very cool. I remember before we even got contracted, I remember visiting the site and just being blown away when I walked up to the hill, knowing where you had discussed with me where you wanted to put the house. And I don't think there's a bad view anywhere on your property. Absolutely.
No. We are blessed. Yeah, as you can see, it's kind of hard, the picture you have there, but that's Pikes Peak above my head, which is just phenomenal. You get to see in its different stages, the snow, it is beautiful. And then on the other side, we get a glimpse of the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. So you're right. We have great views. So.
Very cool. Very cool. So you found this property. When did the idea of building a home, were you considering a stick frame home, or were you always considering a timber frame or a log home? How did the wooden home
come to be?
Part of the process, yeah.
So that picture is actually, there's a shed on the property, and we knew we wanted to build right at the top, which is the picture, and that's where we did. And we can see one neighbor, and they're in a log home, and it just suits this area so well. And so we started originally, I'm looking at that when I look off, so I'm actually looking at that. But we started thinking about a log home, and friends of mine actually had a log home, and the maintenance that's involved was not something I was interested in at retiring out here. So that was one of the reasons we chose not to go with logs. And then it got, in February of this year, it got to -17 below. I guess that was redundant, but it got to -17, and I'm like, oh, a log home it's not as efficient as a sit panel home. So we actually knew nothing about sit panels until we met you. But we did know that log was not our route, but we did want some timbers. So that's kind of where that we knew we wanted timbers, not log, and we didn't know where to go from there until we came to a log and timber home show.
Well, speaking of the Log and Timber Home Show, I don't know if you remember, I actually, oh doggone, I don't have it here with me. I found the little information card. We actually met each other in January of 2015 in Columbus, Ohio at the Log and Timber Home Show. Talking about the home shows, I'm a big believer in them. I've always believed in the shows. I think it is a tremendous information gathering for our customers. Can you share with everyone what did you learn about the show? What did you like about going to the Log and Timber Show?
Absolutely. And let me, before I even start there, you said about getting the Log and Timber Home magazine. So we did that. When we came to this, they have a special at the Log and Timber Home, and we got the magazine, and I did exactly what you said. I've been pulling out, I created a 3-ring binder, and I pulled out, like, this is what I want my kitchen, this is a feature I want in my home, and I kept it by room, and we have used it throughout the whole process. So I do agree completely with that, getting that membership. We went to the Log and Timber Home show in Columbus in 2015, and I think we went the next year, Then we actually came out to the one in Denver.
Mhm.
And the things I love, like you said, you get to meet a lot of builders. You get to see different components of the home. Metal roofing, for instance. We found the concrete log siding we're going to use. We
Mhm.
found when we saw you, because your display, I remember it in Columbus, and it had the examples of the joinery, which was one of the things my husband absolutely loved. And then the SIP panels, when you started talking to us about those, we're very energy conscious people, and you can't beat the R value. I mean, when our inspector came out, he was like, that's 12-inch ceiling. What's the R value? And we were telling him, he's like, and it's passed. Whoop, passed. You don't have to worry. So that's the beauty of these log and timber home shows, is getting to see the actual components that you want in your home.
Yeah, I agree. It was funny on my personal journey before I was here at Timbercraft and involved in timber framing. I grew up with Lincoln Logs, and so I grew up wanting a log home. And I took my wife to the Log and Timber show, and I said, "Man, I want wood walls, wood floor, wood ceilings, wood furniture." And she goes, "Do you want to be married to me? That's too much wood. What about these timber frames? We get to have color and stone." And it was a happy medium. So
Right.
it's funny. It's funny you say that, and kind of transitioning over, and then lo and behold, it became my profession a few years later. So yeah, I love the shows. I think obviously we're in a world of COVID right now, but the magazine does a great job. They do the shows all around the country, and it's awesome. And the other thing is, when you go to these shows, you may meet Timbercraft that's Midwest based in Denver. You may meet us over in New York. As an industry, ultimately, I think what customers are looking for is that personal relationship with the company. The cost of shipping may only skew the difference between companies $2,000 or $3,000. So ultimately, you really want to meet the company, and not the proximity isn't quite as important.
Right. Exactly. Well, when we came out so we had met you, and we'd met, and honestly, I don't remember the names of the other companies, but we met another one in Columbus. And then we thought, well, what you were saying, maybe we should come to Denver and see what log and timber home companies were out in Colorado, which makes sense because that's where we were building. At that point, we had met you several times. We'd gone to, when we met you in 2015, we went to some house not too far from Columbus. You took it. You're like, you want to go see it? Let's go see it. I mean, there was I'm like, woo, let's go do it. And we did.
I remember that.
Before, I completely agree with that. And then the proximity, we thought, well, maybe that would be, and it wasn't enough to sway us from, after meeting you and the personal touches, I can't, it was connection. I think after we actually came to your building in Tecumseh, was it once or twice? And after one of them, we went out for a beer and a sandwich just to talk. I mean, it's that kind of one-on-one personal approach that spoke to us.
Oh, I appreciate that. I appreciate you saying that. So my next question, next slide here, really, we may have already touched on it. What pulled you over to the timber frame side of the university? Was it specifically the R values? Was it the maintenance? What was it that kind of moved you from the log home definitely to the timber frame side?
Maintenance was huge. Every 3 to 5 years, having to clean it and then spray it. I'm like, oh, H to the no, that's not, I'm retired. I want to do things. And then the timber, the beams are so majestic. When anyone walks into our home, they forget about us and look straight up. I mean, that's what they do. Every person without fail just comes in and says, wow, and looks straight up. So the majesty of that, and I don't want all wood. I didn't want wood walls. The same with you, wood floors, wood ceilings. So this adds a great contrast. But the R value, our neighbors that are in the log home that I keep looking at, they spent $500 a month on propane this past winter because it's just the log, and that R value is not there. And we're going to have, between the SIP panels and the siding, about an R35 in the walls,
which is incredible. which is absolutely incredible.
So, I mean,
Definitely.
in fact, don't we have to get an air exchanger because the house is so tight? We've got to
Exactly.
get one of those.
Yeah.
So,
To be able to cycle in the fresh air, absolutely.
right.
Now, I know, and I do encourage customers to come out to our Saturday timber frame home
Yes,
tours and
priceless.
workshops.
Hmm.
But I think I remember seeing you at a couple. Did you
Yeah.
did you follow around a couple of them?
Well, we went to so you're all day. Yeah, we did go to two. One was up in Yellow Springs, which I'd never been to, and I really liked Yellow Springs. But it's because it was so far apart. We started this. I'm a planner, and so we started this so far, and I just wanted to see if there was any changes, refreshes. We tweaked our plans. God love you, James, so much. But we say it every day. Our house is perfect for us. We started this so long ago and made so many changes before we even started talking to you guys, and then after. So yeah, the first one was invaluable because again, that's when we saw the SIP panels. That's when we saw how you house the joints. That's when we saw and we went through your factory, and it was the Hundingers, and I love the Hans and Franz. I knew where you were going with that. So yeah, that's where we saw it all, and that was part of our building our of our questions, part of it, getting them answered and seeing exactly who we wanted to go with. And then once we decided that you guys are us, we wanted to see it again to make sure we remembered everything and write everything down. I have all those notes. I kept everything. So
Terrific. Well, I am also a salesman. So one thing I would like to do is mention to everyone, we actually have one of those Saturday workshop and timber frame home tours coming up very shortly here. It's going to be at our facility. As Peg has mentioned, please, if you're interested in learning more about timber framing, and we're going to tour both a Douglas fir and oak timber frame. It's a chance to see the different species. So if you get a chance, please check Timbercraft Built for Life Facebook. We would love to have you come visit. James and I will both be presenting, and James and I have already started to put together our 2022 schedule. We're actually in February we're going to do one in Columbus, Ohio. In March, we're going to be in Omaha. And I'm going to just say central Wisconsin, since I cannot pronunciate the American native name of the town. We'll just go with central Wisconsin. Then I'm hoping in April that we'll be able to come out and people will be able to meet both of us at your house and be able to tour them around.
Yeah.
And then in May, we also do our Washington, D.C. So please, to everyone watching, check our Facebook, and if you're interested, we do have limited seating. We'd love to have you come out and learn more about Timbercraft and our different workshops. Let's talk about hybrid timber framing, because obviously that's what we built with your house. Right here, got a little sneak peek of some of the hybrid timber framing where we centered it in the middle. When we met, did you know you wanted a hybrid? Did you want a full? When did the hybrid process become part of the process for you?
I believe that was probably around the time we started talking money. We did. I didn't know about a hybrid, I don't think, until again we started going into detail, and we knew in the great room there, we wanted to see that. But because everything's open, it really doesn't feel like a hybrid so much because it is in every part of our main and our bedroom. So it was like the best of both worlds.
And James, I think you did a great job with the design because it is a hybrid, but it almost feels like a full timber frame, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah, that was the intent, is to keep all the open, vaulted, open floor plan concept all flowing together with the vaulted spaces. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and in the areas where, if I could say, we value engineered, you still have timber ridges, timber purlins. I mean, it still feels very much like a full timber frame. So.
Yeah, exactly. Like even the master bedroom, right? It's all vaulted and high ceilings. So once you open that door into that space, again, the ceiling just shoots way up, and you got that whole big open feel. So, yep.
Well, and I'm also looking forward to the future articles Timber Home Living and the Dirt to Done series is going to do, because at that point we'll be able to start sharing some of the finished photos. And
Yep.
I
I'm
love
looking forward to that too, Bob.
Fair enough. Fair enough. For customers, because previously I talked about this being a journey. Do you have any
Yeah.
other advice for customers as they begin to navigate? Because it really is a journey, isn't it?
It absolutely is. It's been, well, like I said, I'm a planner. I can't imagine trying to do this in 1 year, 2 years. It is a journey, especially if you like you said, for your house, it's our house, it's our dream home, and we know this is where we're going to live and die. So you want to take your time. You want to, as many as you can, see the different homes to get ideas. The magazine, I highly recommend, if that's what you want, a Log and Timber Home, so that you can see, this is what I want in this house, or this, and just pull it out and keep a book. So that, for the house part of it, yes, definitely. Finding the right property for you is another thing. And something I guess I didn't think of, and maybe I should have, is when you do find a property, talk to other people in that county as far as building codes, how easy is it to build, things like that. I didn't think of that. We're blessed. Our county's not too bad. But the other couple that I was telling about, Beth, that called me the other night, there are 0 building codes in there. They don't have, and I'm like, what? We had to follow all these. So just things to think about that I guess you just don't know, because it's usually taken care of if you're in a suburb, or in a neighborhood, I should say. So just take your time, be thoughtful. Once you start working with, we start working with James, he hears and understands what, and just makes it come to life. I mean, yes, we did have a plan. We'd worked on it for a couple years. But James was able to say, well, I don't have that kind of 3-dimensional vision. My husband, Tony, and James do. And they were like, oh no, that won't work here. And James was like, let's do this. And then he showed it. And I'm like, oh, yeah. So it was a great partnership. I cannot thank James enough, and you, for just making our dreams come true. It really, it's been a lot of work. But
I do appreciate it.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, you may not remember the names, and it's probably best not to share them, but how many companies did you actually engage with as you went through the process?
So I'm a shopper, and I wanted to have at least 3 viable contenders. I think we started off with maybe 5 people we were interested in, narrowed it down to 3. And it really was easy to go with Timbercraft. Just a big part of it was the relationship at that point. You were so patient with me, because we came to several of those shows, and several of your houses, and several of the workshops. So I do believe the relationship that we formed was a huge part of it, but the quality of the craftsmanship, the details, it just far exceeded what we saw in other companies.
Oh, I do appreciate it. I remember you really liked our house joint.
Yes.
And to me, I think it's so important when you build a home, because in traditional timber frames, everything was covered with lath and plaster. And as an industry, we've actually brought all of these timbers into the room, so it's all visible. And so it's even more important today than it ever was. And a traditionally built home, you'd have like this picture here, you would have a plate and a girt, but when that was first delivered, it was nice and tight. And I remember the first timber frame that we did, it was so tight you couldn't fit a crisp dollar bill on the joint. And then ironically, in 2001, it was on the cover of the magazine, and when we went for the photo shoot, I couldn't believe the gaps that was in the joinery. And that's where, as an organization, we kind of stepped back and said, how do we make this look better? And when you put it in a pocket, as timbers dry, they are going to shrink, but you're not going to see it. But then if you're considering oak or pine that has the heart in it, Well, as that wood dries, it checks. So it wants
Right.
to twist and turn. So now it's in a pocket, so it can't even rotate. And what I love is, I happen to be in a Douglas fir timber frame right now that is 14 years old, and the joinery looks exactly the same as day one. And
Right.
I'm a big believer in the house. So I'm glad that moved you. It's one of the points that helped you choose us. And thank you.
Big
Thank
selling point for my husband.
you.
I liked it because I didn't like seeing the gaps. So that, the prettiness for me, but my husband was like, oh, because of the twisting and that he's all about, he's very OCD, as I've come to learn the last year as we've been building this house, which is going to be great when the house is finished.
You're the best tonight.
Yeah. But it really, he loved that. That was one of the aspects that won him over, to be quite honest.
Terrific. Well, our second segment that the magazine did was Better by Design. And James, this is kind of your court here. Now, to give everyone a little bit of background, Peg and I met in January 2015, but Peg became a client three years later, 36 months later. And I looked through, and you signed our design contract, and our very first meeting for our design services was January 18, 2018. Now, James, obviously, Peg and Tony live in Ohio. We're in Michigan. Most of our clients are out of state. How do you normally meet with clients? I guess that's my first question. How do you normally meet with the clients?
Yeah, so unless they're able to make it in for one of those home show tours, I really only get to meet with clients on the phone or through a screen sharing website that we use. And now, especially with COVID, I don't know if I've met maybe one or two of our clients last year at all. So we use a screen sharing website, and as we walk through and go through the process of the design, I get to actually make corrections and edits on the computer screen with the client watching exactly everything that's happening going on. So their input is taken and then displayed to them live. So yeah,
I think that's really neat, because back my very first year of timber framing, I mean, the internet was it was going in 2000, but it's certainly not what it is today. But I remember when we would start a project, we would have to get topos, we'd have to figure out the grades and all those different things. And now it amazes me how you just click the buttons, and I'm a technology dinosaur compared to James, but he blows my mind the way he zooms in on the earth, and I like that you're able to see immediately, does this project lend itself to a walkout, does it not? But talking about their design in particular, how did you get their design started? What did you do? And before you answer that question, Peg, this is the actual drawing that you gave me at the Log and Timber Home Show. This is way more information than James and I ever get. Usually it's on a cocktail napkin or something small like that. I mean, this is amazing. How did you hire someone? How did you get this?
No, it's the software we found at like Home Depot. It's called HGTV Design. And because we started on paper, and then we're like, well, and then I taught at a vocational high school, and they had a CAD program there. And I'm like, well, I know they have stuff out there. I think we can do this. And the other day, I was looking at this picture, and our house, I mean, we stuck to it. That's the pretty much one change in the bathroom, but nothing. That's our house. So except you guys put the wood in there.
Well, James, talk a little bit about the initial design meetings. What all did you guys end up doing? Yeah. So talking like the image you have shown here, kind of like site location, kind of figuring out, view lines for the house. And like Peg was saying earlier, there isn't a bad view for them. So they could have spun this thing 360 degrees and had great views wherever they wanted to. But just kind of like focusing on that. And then with that floor plan, like Peg did an excellent job mocking that up for us. To really give us a really good understanding. And if we're hiring Peg, you're more than welcome to come join the Timbercraft. That's awesome.
I'm retired, thank you.
So it was just kind of like going through that process of just talking about the floor plan, bringing it into the CAD space, placing the timbers that she wanted, especially with the species of wood that she was going to use for Colorado, being Doug fir, making sure that those all worked and jived with the floor plan. So that's kind of how it all started as far as design.
Now, typically, Peg, what were your main goals with the house? What all did you actually positive? I remember Pikes Peak needing to be framed in one of the windows.
Right there. Yep.
But what else?
We had, so the back wall of windows looks identical to this, except one of the windows to the right of the door is not there. And I get a lot of questions from people when they come in, like, why isn't there a window there? My mother passed away when I was my first year teaching, and I got her china cabinet, and it's gonna go right there. So when everybody's like, wow, you planned your house, I'm like, well, I take credit for it, James, sorry. But I say, yes, I put, my furniture. Things like, so talk about furniture, our bedroom suite. It's the only piece of furniture we brought out here with us. But our nightstands are a little taller, and James is like, no problem. And he made the windows just a smidge higher than the nightstand, so we have unobstructed views. So just anything, little tweaks that we wanted, it's possible. And that was, because this is my second house I've built, and we did not get that level of customization in the last house. So this has been wonderful.
Well, good. I just, it's funny, this photo was taken obviously during construction, but oh my goodness, what a view. I mean, it's just absolutely amazing. So
yes.
And again, as James talked about, there's no bad views. You're on top of a mountain. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. Now, James, you mentioned the original floor plan and design. I see that Peg, this is a ranch, but you actually in the initial concept had just one bedroom in the basement.
Correct.
And what is that rectangle in the center there? Is that a pool table?
Pool table. Yeah.
Rock on.
Yes.
All right. Okay.
So the wall of windows and doors you saw on the top floor is mirrored down below here. So it's the exact same. So the pool table looks right out. We originally, now here's something, so that room in the long rectangle on the right in the basement, that was going to be another bedroom. And our mechanics was going to go right underneath our bedroom, which is where the mechanics room is in this picture. And James said, why don't you put the mechanics down there where you have more room and put both bedrooms down there? And that's what we ended up doing. So James said, it kind of makes more sense. Now I'll tell you why I wanted the mechanics. I wanted hot water right away underneath our bedroom, but that's fine. We got a recirculator, but it does make, and it works so much better with the bedroom down there. And that's not even part of the timber frame home, but James he's like, think about this. And I'm like, okay.
And I noticed this, I found this as I went through the files, the original timber frame design, and we'll call it, James and I refer to as timber crafted, where we the structural timbers in the master, which is on the left-hand side, and the four bents going right through the middle, and that ended up a little bit later, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. But James, typically, and I've seen this in the 10 years that we've been working together, you tend to draw the floor plan and the timber frame before you even get into the initial elevations. Can you kind of talk about why you do that?
Yeah, so we want to make sure that the floor plan and the frame are actually going to work well together. And so it doesn't, for us to go elevation wise and try to squeeze the timber structure inside elevations, doesn't really work out too well, because it really depends on the style of trusses too that you're going to use. Like I think originally here we had these arc bottom chord profiles, so we needed to make sure that works with the floor plan. And specifically, if you have a style of bent that has, say if the arcs come way down, or if you have angled braces coming through, if they're way too low, you can't just plop like a hammer being bent into an elevation that only has like a 9-foot or 10-foot
Right.
eave wall.
Right.
So like this structure here is a story and a half, as currently shown here. But I believe we, through the process of design that Bob's going to talk about later, actually eliminated some of the heights and the different style
Correct.
of bend. But yeah, so we don't like to go directly into elevations and then try to adjust and tweak and correct a timber frame that doesn't actually fit the style that you want.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it makes a lot of sense. I've seen over the years where, you know, people have known and they've talked to architects and said, hey, I want my great room to be timber framed, and they'll work with an architect. But I think one of the disconnects is, well, while your architect's drawing that floor plan, draw your timber frame. Because I had a project many years ago where the customer wanted hammer beams, but the architect had designed a 9-foot eave height in the great room, which means, you know, with those angled beams would have been about 3.5 feet off the floor coming in at a 45-degree angle. And, you know, had that customer just called me in the beginning and I said, hey, we need to have a taller eave height right here, they wouldn't have had to go back and redesign the house. And I think it makes sense doing the floor plan and the timber frame, and once the flow is right, the way you transition over into the elevations, it really makes a lot of sense from a design standpoint.
And that's something else, Bob, saying that triggered, because you guys had the in-house design available, the engineering, that we could talk to James, so we didn't have to hire an out of this company architect, made a huge difference as well, because everything was in-house and we didn't have to worry about any of those kind of quirky flaws. So it was perfect.
Now, James, I know with this house we built in Colorado on top of a mountain, what are some of the interesting challenges in designing a house that customers don't have to worry about, but what do you take care of behind the scenes? What are some of the design criteria?
Yeah, so what we call it here is our due diligence. One of the things is we typically call the building jurisdictions up, figure out what the snow loads are, because that's one of the biggest things in Colorado. Depending on where you're at and how high you get, everything's kind of based off an elevation height. So you have to make sure you're planning for that timber frame to be able to be strong enough and sustain those type of loads. Also with like different areas of the country, you have seismics and then soil types too. So like I know something very specific for Peg and Tony was this house was only going to be in the ground maybe a few feet because of rock that's down there, and they knew that they had to be up, which is it was a bit of an interesting concept for us, because as we're going through, we're like, yeah, we got half wall, you know, exposed. So we're putting windows in the basement where we typically wouldn't have windows. But it all worked out very, very well for Tony and Peg. But,
Right. And one of the things too, we didn't realize, because being a teacher, we've only been out here in the summer, Christmas break time. In the fall, it's very windy, like 30 plus miles. So all on these designs, there were these things called Simpson ties. I'm like, what? Okay. And but now we understand why we had to put them in, because we had some whopping winds, and we're like, oh, thank God for those Simpson ties. So we did not have to worry about it. We kind of wondered, but once we were here all year, we understood. So it was a blessing. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's engineer's best friend.
Yeah.
Now, James, I have a question for you. I know that not rushing the design process has always been something that you've talked about ever since I've known you. What were some of the advantages? Because we actually started the design in 2018 and then signed our manufacturing agreement 3 years later. What were what do you see were advantages on this design that, you know, will also apply to other customers if they provide a little additional time for their design?
Yeah, it's the advantage of being able to pick up and foresee issues with the design before you actually push it right to manufacturing. It costs a lot more to try to fix something while it's standing up than to handle it inside a design room. So was one of the biggest advantages there. Everything can get planned out appropriately, as long as everybody's on the same page with the whole process and understanding like view line spaces, So that can all get planned out before, like, again, you're dealing with it on site and tearing something down or moving something later on. So, yep.
Right. I always like the fact, and I think it kind of helped with Peg and Tony here, is that they had a set of plans that were done, and able to go out and meet with general contractors, because it's not uncommon. General contractors prefer certain things, and will ask, even though a design is done, I'm kind of touching on our next segment here, but liking certain types of foundations, things like that. So
Right.
I think it's wise, and I'm glad it really worked out for all of us here on this project.
Well, and for the homeowner, it's not near as stressful.
Sure.
It's not, we didn't have any, I mean, it was because we had so much time, because we were both working full time, it was part of a process and not a lot of stress, which I will take any day.
Terrific. Now,
there it is.
I have up on the screen, and you mentioned it, how we moved the 2 bedrooms down there, the mechanical. Now, personally, as a general contractor, one of the things I love about having the mechanical room off to the side is they're noisy, and it's not under the master. So I think that's
Right.
a wise move with the design. And then in terms of the final design here, it looks very similar to those plans that you provided, but again, we have all the different dimensions and whatnot. James, is there anything else you really want to mention about the floor plans here?
No, it's just, again, you can kind of see the timber frame overlay of the structure, so you can see where the timbers are falling in line with, over the top of different elements of the house, kind of over the kitchen space. You can see where all the timber framing's at, and then in the living room and great room there. So you can just kind of, that's just one of the things we do here, is just this overlay, so you can actually see where you're gonna see timbers in your space. But
Well, and I think one of the things that you do an excellent job at too is hanging different electric and hiding some of the electric in raceways in the timber, and being able to have fans and things like that. I think I think you do an excellent job at that.
Yeah, part of the process there of getting electric, that's always one of the fun things about timber frames, right? So it's trying to hide as much as you can. So
Sure. And then the final elevations, just beautiful.
That's it.
Yeah,
that's
really,
it. That's what it came out. The dormers, I'm not sure if originally we didn't have dormers, and I don't know. I know that was a conversation, I think maybe between us one time, James, and all of a sudden, and I'm so thankful we put those dormers in. It's really sharp inside.
Terrific.
Everything runs linear there.
I know we've got a couple of new segments that the magazine's going to be doing, but we showed the elevation. Here's a little sneak peek before the siding's on, to kind of show how things turned out, and if you actually look at it, I mean, James, there it is.
Nailed it.
I mean, that's it. It looks really good. Now, our third segment in this Dirt to Done, it was the lay of the land. So, we touched on this just a second ago. You had plans. You're 1,200 miles away. What were you looking for in a general contractor?
So my husband was a remodeler back home in Ohio. So when we came out here, he didn't have any of his contacts. So that was a little disconcerting. We live in a neighborhood of like 8 35-acre plots. And we talked to 2 of our neighbors who built your home, got a couple ideas there, and then met with them, because the first thing we did was build the pole barn that you see here next to me. And that's what we're living in the RV in there. So we talked to a couple people about a pole barn, and the person that we went with also did houses. And he seemed he'd been here, he's from Ohio, but he was seemed very honest, and he has been so honest throughout this whole process. So that was something we wanted, someone who knew people here and had contacts, and he actually built 2 of the homes in our neighborhood, and then after ours, he's building, another guy bought a lot in this property. So knowledgeable and honest is what we were looking for.
Now, is Tony's doing some of the work, right? He's doing the interior work, and your general contractor was kind of like the macro, the exterior. Is that okay?
Correct. He was responsible, because being from a subdivision, you're not used to putting in a septic system. You're not used to putting in a cistern, all of that. So knowing, and he knows what the codes are in the county, which is huge. That's definitely something I would recommend your, what do you call them? GC, general contractor? Yeah, make sure he knows the codes of the county. Otherwise, you have to go back and redo stuff, which is never fun. And we have not had to do that, which has been nice.
Now, one of the things I remember you called,
That's
and I
Mark
think
there.
we spoke before you actually worked with James on this, is the ICFs. He preferred ICFs over a poured wall. Was that the case?
Well, so no, actually, Mark that's Mark standing up. That's my husband been over there. He had never actually done, or no, maybe he had done ICFs, but it was, I don't want to say it was you guys again. It was at one of the, somehow ICFs came up, and it was, I know it was you, it was at one of our meetings with you, and because we didn't know anything about them.
Right, Yellow Springs.
And yeah, see, I think because Mark had never done it or hasn't done it often. And when we started looking at the price difference, I'm like, and I'm so thankful we did, because we don't have to insulate by county code any of those walls that are ICF, because of the ICF itself is already insulated. So that's, except we do have to cover them before our CO, but that's beside the point. But it has been so toasty. It got down to 30 yesterday, and the day before overnight, 54 in the basement there, and I left windows open. I mean, it's amazing. Yeah.
James, can you give like the 1 minute little description for people exactly what an ICF is? It's a poured wall, but it's a little bit different. I'll let you go ahead and take it.
Yeah, it's an insulated concrete form. It's basically a sandwich. It's foam on the outside and concrete in the middle. It's typically 2.5 inches of foam, and then kind of goes by core width. Yeah, like 6, 8, 10, 12 inch concrete in the middle. And it has a lot of rebar. There's a lot of reinforcement in these walls. So they're incredibly efficient, energy efficient, and very, very strong.
And
yeah,
it also saves, like when we finish that basement, it already has like these plastic studs in it. So you don't have to frame out. You can just drill, screw what's the whiteboard?
Yeah, the drywall
right to it, which was a huge plus as well.
Yep, in that picture there, you can see it's all those black plastic strips there. Those are
inside.
Yep. To attach to with any kind of siding, interior and exterior too. So.
Yep.
Yeah, it's definitely a good system, and I know obviously with timber frames, as timber framers, we strongly encourage the use of the structurally insulated panel, which is the wall and roof system. It's kind of a happy marriage. I've always talked about SIPs and timber frames as a happy marriage, because your great room is tall and vaulted. And if it's stick framed, it's gonna, be honest, it'll be a booger to heat and cool. But the SIPs change the whole dynamic. It's kind of like a Yeti cooler. Put warm in, it stays warm. Put cool in, it stays cool. And so I think, I think I had spoke to your builder. He had done a SIP house previously, or he was certainly very gung ho on keeping the SIPs in the project. And for us as a manufacturer, sometimes when we're providing SIPs, we're kind of taking away a major revenue source for general contractors, and so there's a little pushback there. But I remember him being very open to the SIP process and being gung ho to actually do the installation on it. So.
Yeah, he was very intrigued by it. I'm not sure. Now, one of the gentlemen that helped build it, he had done several SIP houses. So that's why he had our Mark, our general contractor, he made sure he was on our crew when we put up the walls and the ceiling. But after seeing it, they're all like, Mark's convinced this is like the best thing, the best way to go. So I'm like, yeah.
Straight, flat, 3 times stronger, 6 times more energy efficient. It just absolutely, it certainly makes a lot of sense. Also, put my salesman cap on back here, right here on the Timber Home Living site and on our YouTube channel. I do have a webinar specifically about structurally insulated panels. So if you'd like to learn more about those, please go ahead and download those on demand. You'll be able to learn a lot more about the SIPs. We actually in that talk about the difference between EPS and polyurethane. So there's some good research for you there as you're going through. So the lay of the land. One of the things that we did, June of 2020, 3 months after the pandemic started, we signed a fabrication contract.
Yes.
Now, a couple of curveballs were thrown at us, material availability. But one of the things we did is we looked at value engineering just before we executed our contract. James, can you kind of share what some of the can you explain what value engineering is and what were some of the little tricks that we did?
Yeah, so in value engineering, there kind of in that term in itself is where we look at the structure as a whole and start elimination or substituting out different elements to try to bring the project back into budget if budget is an issue. Certainly with COVID, with a lot of things happening there, materials and supplies just going crazy and haywire on that end.
Crazy.
It's just something we do a lot of that we find ourselves in, especially with like hybriding of a home.
Yeah. Because our original proposal, we had a lot more timber in it in terms of concept, but what we ended up, and I remember one of the value engineering is against the exterior walls. Because the SIPs are structurally insulated panels, you found a way to save some significant money. I'll let you kind of explain what you did there.
Yeah. So in the value engineering process, there was an earlier image of a frame. That's one of the things we're able to do here is take the project where it stands and pull the raw data out of the CAD space, BIM modeling, and take that information and be able to apply it to a number that's real in real life terms. So when we realized that frame that we had gone through the process of the design with was a little bit out of the reach of budget, we went through this value engineering process, and you can see here as the final frame is shown here is that we eliminated some of the arcs in the timber frame and went to a straight bottom cord, and then we did eliminate some of the bends that were at the ends of the home and just used the SIP walls as the structural element, as Bob mentioned. So it's through the process of that just to get you guys a timber frame. That's the ultimate goal. We want to fire up the machine here. And design is fun, but it's a lot more fun when you're actually building the home. So and get to see the frame in real life. But
All right. Well, again, it was time to build a home, and we actually executed our material agreement June 29th of 2020 and got that going. And our typical lead time is 90 to 120 days. Our lead time on this got pushed out a little bit just because of availability of resources just after our country was just opening back up at that point. So our lead time got pushed on this a little bit, but that actually takes us to our fourth segment of the Dirt to Done series, which was rising to the occasion. And this is my passion right here. I can tell by the smile on Peg's face how exciting it was. Now, what for a lot of people don't know, I actually have my own construction company, and Peg and I actually contracted for me to come out, and I ended up sending the skipper, sending Scotty out there.
Wonderful.
To get that raised, and we got the structure up. But before we even got there, the one thing that you and I talked about, Peg, was access to the site, because you're building on top of a hill. I ship everything, as do all the other timber frame manufacturers, on full-size semis. And as you can see, as our semis are rolling in there, it clearly was not 75 and sunny on that day when we got in there. But way down at the hill was a staging area. The reason we had to do that was a couple. Certainly, the steepness of the driveway, the sharp turn of the driveway. a real blessing that I think you had on this project, Peg, is the fact that you had the spare land, you had the room
Yes.
down there for us to be able to go ahead and unload and get that up there. Do you feel, how did the staging process work? Do you feel it worked pretty good?
Yeah, it worked very well. Because we're at the top of that knoll, there's like very little space, so there's no way we could have put it up there, even had they made it up. There's just not enough, unless you went on the neighbor's property, because we're pretty close to it. So down there worked great, and then it allowed us to go down and get the pieces as we needed them. And that turnaround down there, we put that down there for that same reason, because we've had a lot of big trucks, and out here in the mountains, it's tough. So they just turn around, and we put a 30-foot gate down at the bottom so they can swing in. So yeah, it worked. Yeah, staging it was great down there. We put the beams up top and then had all the sit panels down there.
Well, do me a favor. When I come visit, I'm going to have my RV, so make sure you leave that staging area. That way I can make that turnaround, okay?
Absolutely. That's exactly, it's there for us too with our RV, so got it.
Right. So, we got the crane up there. You can see the King Post bents as we're getting ready to set the timber frame. I guess, first of all, talk about raising the frame. I still almost get goosebumps. I get really excited. I mean, doggone is it cool lifting these things up and getting the process going. Can you share what the experience was watching it fly in the air?
Absolutely. It was really cool because we had our deck down, so we built them on the deck. And then once we started raising them, you get that, I think, the first realization of just how grand it's going to be, how tall it's going to be, and just see the beauty of it start to appear. And then it's funny, you say that, mentioned it earlier, people stop. So there's a road right down there, and you could see them pulled over and just watching. And we're like, yep. And because the walls are tall, any contractor, anybody, hey, we're out here on Highway 11, blah, blah, blah. Oh, you're the big ass house. They say every single one. I'm like, it's not that big. It's 1,800 square feet. The walls are tall. That's my story. But that's exactly what everyone says. But to answer your question, it was the first, I think, beginning of realization of our dreams, seeing those bents go up.
That's good. Here at Timbercraft, we have always pre-fitted our frames. I know that was something that you guys researched. Can you kind of share why you think it's important that customers choose a manufacturer like Timbercraft that pre-fits?
There's a lot less room for error on a job site. When you're half an hour from the nearest town, and to try to make any kind of changes on site would be a nightmare. So knowing these are pre-fit, they're numbered, it's beautiful. I was a math teacher, so I love numbers, and it was very easy to see where everything went. And there were, we didn't have to worry about issues. And God knows, there's enough going on with the build that you don't want to have any extra worries. And there were none. It was awesome. It was awesome.
I feel it's just so much fun to see your excitement and our clients' excitement, and it's amazing. I actually, the last time I was in Colorado, I did a job in Pagosa Springs, and the customer had shared that their father, his dream was to build a timber frame house, and he passed away with cancer, but his kids, in his honor, 3 of them built a timber frame Clarkson, and the long driveway, you could hear the semi making the turn, the engine revving, and one daughter started crying, another daughter started crying, and I don't know why I was crying, and it was just it's just such an intimate process, and it's just so much fun to be there. Well, we're just about out of time, but your story's not done yet. There's a couple more issues that are going to be coming. I'm really excited to see it. What sort of cool things are we going to be seeing in the upcoming editions of the Dirt to Done series?
So we're hopefully we'll see the outside, which is the concrete siding, log siding. And then that we're supposed to start that in October, which is right around the corner. We've been working on plumbing and electric. So the next thing is the finishing touches. We started to get drywall up. Our kitchen cabinets are in. We ordered 5 months ago. So yeah, just understanding that process. So the finishing touches, getting the lights in. I had to order 7 feet ceiling fans, so it would look like they fit and they belonged in the great room, which was awesome. And they do, they look great. So the finishing touches, we got leather. I've never seen it before. It's the granite. Instead of shiny, it's called a leather finish.
Okay.
So you'll get to see that. So yeah, the exciting part now is starting to happen. It's the finishing touches.
Well, I know James and I are very excited to see it, and I hope everyone continues to tune in to this Dirt to Done series.
Yep.
Overall, though, I want to thank you guys for joining. Peg, thank you so much for your business, for the webinar, sharing this information. James, a father of 2 young ones, I appreciate you staying late and helping with this. So I'm pretty excited, and I look forward to the future additions. Anyways, at this point, I'm excited to hear what question Amanda has. So I'm going to go ahead and kick it over to Amanda. Thanks so much.
Great. Thank you, guys. Bob, James, Peg, everyone did a fantastic job this evening. We are going to jump over to some questions. So I'm going to have the team join me here.
Okay.
We'll get rolling. Hi, guys. All right. So first question. We're considering Timbercraft for a project, but they are not located in our home state. Peg seems very happy with Timbercraft. Please explain again why you know hiring out of state Timbercraft was the right choice.
Peg, I'll go ahead and let you in.
Okay, so it was easy after we met several builders, a couple in Colorado, 3 or 4 from the Midwest. But the rapport that we built with Bob and James, as well as the key parts, the joinery, my husband really was impressed with that, the way the timbers go together. That was a big part of it. And the sit panels were another, we hadn't seen them, and Bob was really knowledgeable about that. So I think it was those components that did it for us.
Great, thanks, Peg.
Thank you.
And a quick reminder to everyone, I kind of jumped right into questions. If you would like to enter your questions, take a look at your control panel and you'll see a questions tab area, and feel free to start putting them in there. And we'll go through these. One other note here, and you can see probably there on the screen, anything that we don't get to tonight, or if you guys have additional questions, we will get your information over to Bob and James and the team at Timbercraft, and they can get those answered, and we'll get back to you quickly. All right, can James or Bob explain how much it costs to start their design service, and how many hours does the whole process take?
James, let's kind of share this one.
Yeah.
To start here at Timbercraft, we only ask for $1,000 deposit that we refund to you in the manufacturing agreement. But you know, answering how much a design costs also depends upon how complicated a house is. James, I mean, some of our designs are very simple. It's very inexpensive, but over the years, you've worked on some pretty large projects. So how would you help answer this?
Yeah, so we do kind of bill here at like an hourly rate. So I mean, as far as planning on budgeting for design, it kind of feels, it seems like a lot of the times we're striking inside like the 1, 1.5, 2% of the overall budget of the project, even though it's like an hourly based design process. So it really depends too on like conditions where Peg and Tony, they had to get engineered sealed plans because there's certain conditions that they have. Now, if you're in an area that doesn't require building codes, you know, you can certainly get away with different things. But so as far as like design and the process here, what I normally see is about 100, 120 hours to actually complete some of the designs. It really depends, like Bob says, complexity. You can get some of these that have like 30 corners, and you're dealing with a lot of different valleys and roof conditions and wall conditions. So if you have one that's kind of like a T-shaped, like Peg and Tony's, it's a little bit more simple. So, and then providing plans and as much information like Tony and Peg did can absolutely help speed up the process of design.
Exactly. And one of the things I think that's important to understand is the level of detail that customers are looking for. For example, my wife, as a builder, I could see everything when we designed her house. She needed a 3D model. So when you do 3D modeling, you do images, obviously there's going to be more design, and we can do that, but it's individual to each client. So it's hard to say. And James is a master at putting the plans together. So it's a lot of fun. But ultimately, I always encourage customers to at least start the design, get the overall floor plan put together. That way you have at least an idea of what the house is going to cost to build. So.
Fantastic. Thanks, guys. Bob, earlier you mentioned some of the cities you guys are going to be visiting and showing off homes in. We've got a listener here who's wondering about North Carolina.
Oh my goodness, we got several homes in North Carolina. We absolutely will do it. Send me your address. Tell me where you're at. I will absolutely put a show together. Over the years, we've done a lot up in the mountains, Grandfather Mountain, Banner Elk. I got a lot of houses I can show you. Please tell me where you're at, and I'll be glad to show you.
Fantastic. All right. Quick fun question here. Is that really a race car behind Bob?
What's that? Is this a race car?
Is that really a race car?
It is a race car. It is absolutely a race car. The month before the pandemic, we were doing a timber frame install in Sedalia, Missouri, and I looked over and I saw that there was a tarp and it was weathering, and I asked, I was like, who is that? And I went over and I found out it is the 1993 Hendrick Motorsports number 5 Terry Labonte car, and 11-year-old. I had to negotiate with 11-year-old to buy this car, but I bought the frame of the car, and I think it was heaven sent. I truly think it was heaven sent, because I have an opening and the car was exactly 2 inches smaller than the opening. So I had to buy the car, had to put it up there. I'm in my man cave. If anyone ever wants to see it, you're absolutely welcome. And by the way, the number 5 car, out of retirement this year, is in first place in NASCAR. So kind of geeked on that. So.
Nice. All right, we'll take a couple more questions here before we wrap it up for this evening. Go ahead, keep entering your questions. As I mentioned, we will get those over to Bob and James. So we'll keep that information flowing. And we got another one here, Texas, North Texas. Are you gonna be headed down south? Yes, all right.
Yes.
Fantastic. All right, here. So we will be building in a really windy area. Peg knows a little bit about this. Our builder doesn't like SIPs, but I think they are stronger and quieter than stick building. Can you elaborate?
Peg, I guess first of all, you live in a windy, top of a hill, windy as it can be. Tell everyone what it's like.
Yes, definitely. We didn't realize how windy it was until we've lived here for the past year. The Simpson ties that go, it's a super neat process how the SIP panels get tied down to the stick frame below it, or we have concrete, so both, which allows for that stability. We had 29-mile-per-hour winds yesterday, and it sounds awesome as it's whipping around the house, but the house is super solid. It's a comforting feeling when you have that kind of wind whipping around you.
Sure, and James, I mean, certainly over the years we've been designing timber frames based on the wind loads. We're always increasing our hold downs and securing the structure. It's kind of amazing what we're putting in the plans, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's over the course of time here, and 10 years, it's even kind of been interesting watching the evolution of the joinery as far as what's going in
Tony just started a fire, sorry.
Perfect timing.
I
So,
thought
yeah,
you had
no,
a
it's just
disco party
interesting.
going.
Yeah, no, it's just really interesting to see the structure overall and how it's evolved over time here. Wind loads are increasing a little bit here across the nation, and they're kind of adapting into the code book, and you can kind of see that distributing with prescriptive methods on how to keep houses from cracking or, rotating. So it's designs is an evolutionary world. It just keeps growing and changing as we go along. So. Yep.
And I've really noticed that it's really increased over the years. I mean, certainly what's building my house in 2005 and seeing what we do in 2021, it's even more.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting, right? Because yours, you have a king post bent in your house, and that thing is about as wide. Actually, it's a little bit wider than Peg and Tony's, and you have just a standard like through tenon connection, with just standard Morrison tenery, and Peg McVeigh's required steel knife plates and pins. I don't understand like the higher snow load, but yeah, it's just interesting to see the world evolve with the way that in the code book in relation to these increase in wind load, seismic areas, and it's very, very fun. So.
Absolutely.
Awesome. All right, guys, we had a question about the Log and Timber Home Show, which I'll answer quickly, just being representative from there. We did have to postpone our fall into winter events for this year. Obviously, we're still trying to get past COVID and make sure everyone stays safe. Yeah. We're hoping to announce our 2022 winter into spring schedule here soon. So everyone be looking. If we can pull it off, we're going to be in a lot of cities across the country. So we hope to see you guys there.
Absolutely. And those shows are so critical for customers to meet the vendors, to see the product. Peg's touched on. It's a tremendous thing, and
it really is.
We encourage everyone to go out and meet it and choose Timbercraft. So.
and as Bob mentioned, we do have a lot of webinars on our site. We have a lot of Timbercraft webinars on the Timber Home Living site on demand, as this one will be after the event as well. So feel free to partake in those. All right, we're going to wrap it up with one question. We'll pass on the rest to the Timbercraft team. We are building 3 years from now and have a basic idea of a floor plan. What are the pros or cons of starting your design agreement now rather than later?
James,
yeah,
let's let you go ahead and start this answer.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so the benefits of starting now is you can kind of start to adapt the floor plan for the different building costs that are occurring now. So if you're ahead of the game, you have a good understanding of where the market is going with construction materials, you can certainly plan for that. And plus you can start to see and visualize that space. So you can do like more of like the fun shopping of like your kitchen cabinetries and get all that lined up ahead of time. So that when the time comes to dig the hole in the ground, you have everything covered and you know exactly what's happening and have a full understanding of your construction from top to bottom. So it is a really big benefit. Instead of just trying to cram it through, spend a couple months in design, just like smash it in.
Do that.
A lot of unknowns happen, and that's where errors and then costs can occur.
Well, certainly, I've also noticed as customers have kind of honed in on a particular general contractor, they're more inclined towards certain finishes or certain foundations or building systems. And so it allows us, I mean, I can't tell you how many customers think, hey, I finished my design, I'm done. But you haven't hired a general contractor. You don't know those specifics. And that's why it's not uncommon that James has a little bit of design work where he has to switch from poured walls to ICF or whatever it may be. But truly, I think what I really want customers to understand is that you may be investing 4, 7, 8, 9, 10, however much you invested in design. You get to know what your house costs. You know what the general contractors cost. Design your house, figure it out. I mean, I can't stress how important that process is. And certainly here at Timbercraft, we'd love to help you, and we'd love to help bring this. I mean, truly, even though I'm nearing retirement, I cannot tell you how important and what a blessing it has been to help customers achieve their dream home and how cool it is. And Peg, the fact that you trusted us and shared this experience with us, I love you. Working with you was a blast. I look forward to the next 2 issues that are coming out here at Timber Home Living. You rock. I love you guys. I can't wait to see you guys here soon. And
I can't wait for you guys to come out and visit either. Yeah, both of you. James and your kids, I think we did one video call, and the kids, he was babysitting because his wife had to go to work, and we're like, hey, that's all right. But he made it happen. You guys have been awesome. You guys, and I will say too, doing that in advance, taking 2 or 3 years just makes it much smoother, much more enjoyable, much less stressful. So I would also advocate for a lengthy time so you can make it your own.
I appreciate it. And Amanda, thank you for everything on this. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, you did awesome. Thank you.
Thanks. Yes, you guys, Bob, James, Peg, thank you all for spending your evening with us, and those of you out there listening. We do hope you enjoyed the presentation. We will be sending out an email with a link to the recording, and you should have that in your inboxes in about the next 24 hours. So on behalf of our sponsor, Timbercraft and Timber Home Living, we'd like to thank you for joining us. Have a great evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care.
Good night.
Good night.